The rain hadn't let up all evening. It came down in heavy sheets, blurring the glowing tail lights ahead of her into red smudges, washing the world into silver and black. Wine hunched closer to the wheel, the wipers slashing back and forth at full speed but barely keeping pace. She was born tired, the kind of tired that made her eyes sting and her thoughts slow. Her entire body ached with the weight of a day that refused to end. Her boss voice still echoed in her head from earlier. "You need to stop missing deadlines, Wine. We can't afford it." She had swallowed back her retorts, forced herself to nod, and walked out his office with her jaw clenched so tightly she would given herself a headache. Now driving home in storm, she felt like that headache pulsing at her temples. Almost home, just 20 more minutes, then bed. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder with a new message, probably from Maya, her best friend, who checked in whenever she knew Wine worked late. Wine's eyes flickered towards it. Just for a second, that second was all it took. The tires lost traction on a curve slicked with rain. The steering wheel jerked violently, her breath catching as the car fish-tailed. No, no, no! The strike of rubber tore through the night as the vehicle spun. Metal collided with the guardrail, glass exploded, and pain slowed like lightning across her body as the airbag deployed. The sound, the impact, and the smell of burned rubber, it all crashed into her senses in one violent blur. Then silence. Her head lowered against the seat. Warmth trickled down her forehead into the eye. Everything felt distant, muffled. She thought she heard sirens somewhere far away, but she couldn't be sure. Her last coherent thought before the darkness pulled her under was a strangely absurd one. "I forgot to buy milk again." The paramedics arrived within minutes, rain still hammering down as their flashing lights painted the slick road in red and blue. "She's alive," one confirmed, pressing fingers to Wine's neck. "Pulse is weak but steady." They moved quickly, strapping her to a board, lifting her into the ambulance. One of them fished her phone from the wreck, the screen spiderweb with cracks but still working. The emergency contact screen popped up, and the paramedic frowned. "Emergency contact, Jungkook." He glanced at his partner. "Boyfriend? Ex maybe, doesn't matter, call him." The phone rang. Across the town, Jungkook sat in the near-empty office of his architecture firm. His desk was cluttered with scattered drafts and coffee-stained notes, but he wasn't working. He hadn't been working for hours. His concentration had slipped sometime around 8, and he had been staring blankly at the same sketch since then. He sighed and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He needed to go home, needed sleep. That's when his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, block caller ID. He almost ignored it, but something compelled him to swipe. "Hello?" His voice was rough with fatigue. "Is this Jungkook?" "Yes." "This is County General Hospital. You are listed as the emergency contact for Miss Wine." Every nerve in his body went rigid. "What?" "She's been in a car accident. She is stable but unconscious. We need someone here to authorize treatment if necessary. Can you come?" The world narrowed to a pinpoint. He heard the rest of the words: stable, unconscious, authorized, but they tangled together in his head. Wine. He hadn't heard her name spoken aloud in almost a year, not since their breakup. It landed like a punch, hollowing his chest. "Yeah," he heard himself say, his voice distant. "I will be there. I am on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur. The rain smeared across the windshield, but he barely noticed. His thoughts spun too fast, chasing one another in frantic circles. Why was he still her emergency contact? Why hadn't he changed it? She had friends, family, why him? And yet, beneath the confusion, one truth pulsed louder than anything. He had to get her. Images of her assaulted him as he drove. Vine, laughing in their old apartment, curled up with a blanket too big for her shoulders. Vine on the morning they had gone hiking, hair pulled back messily, eyes shining when they reached the summit. Vine during their last fight, her face pale with anger, her voice breaking when she told him to leave. He had left, and he hadn't seen her since. Now she was lying in a hospital bed somewhere, and they called him. Him. The hospital lobby was bright and sterile, its antiseptic scent wrapping around him as he pushed through the sliding doors. His shoes squeaked on the polished tiles, his chest felt too tight to breathe. He reached the front desk in 3 long strides. Jungkook, he said, breathless. I got a call about Vine. She was in an accident. The nurse nodded with a practiced calm. Yes, Mr. Jungkook, she is in trauma room there right now. They are finishing scans. A doctor will update you shortly. Please wait over there. Jungkook's legs carried him to the waiting chairs, though he barely felt them. The room was dotted with other people, families whispering anxiously, a child crying softly in his mother's lap. The television in the corner murmuring about the weather. Jungkook sat on the edge of his seat, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. Minutes passed like hours. He couldn't stop picturing her lying there, pale, hurt. He couldn't stop remembering the night they broke up, her voice, her tears, the silence afterward. What if she didn't wake up? What if his last memory of her was the last fight? His throat tightened. Finally, a doctor in blue scrubs approached. Mr. Jungkook? Jungkook shot to his feet. Yes, how is she? The doctor's voice was calm, reassuring. She is stable. She suffered a concussion, some cuts and bruises, but no major internal injuries. We are keeping her for observation overnight. She hasn't regained consciousness yet, but her vitals are strong. Relief hit Jungkook so hard his knees almost gave out. He pressed a hand to his face, inhaling shakily. Thank God. You can see her now, the doctor added. Room 213. The door creaked open softly as he entered. The room was dim, the only light coming from a monitor beside the bed. Its green light pulsing steadily. Vine lay motionless against the white sheets, her dark hair tangled around her face. A bandage covered her forehead, a bruise already blooming beneath her eye. Her right arm was hooked to an IV, the plastic tubbing snaking to a bag above her. Jungkook froze. An year had passed since he had last seen her, but it felt like only yesterday. She looked both exactly the same and heartbreakingly different. He stepped closer, his chest tight. Vine, he whispered, though she couldn't hear. His eyes burned, memories assaulted him, the way she used to nudge him awake when he snored, the way she smelled faintly of lavender, the warmth of her hand in his hair. And now she was here, fragile and hurt, and he didn't know what to do. He pulled a chair beside her bed and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. For a long time, he just watched her breathe. Finally, he whispered, I don't know why I am still here, but I am the only one they called. But I'm here. I'm not leaving. He rested his hand carefully near hers, close enough to touch but not quite daring to. His throat ached with the words he had never said. I have missed you, he murmured, voice breaking, more than I wanted to admit. The monitor beeped steadily, rain tapped softly against the window, and Jungkook, the man she had once loved and lost, sat vigil by her side, waiting for her to open her eyes. The first thing Vine registered was sound when she opened her eyes. A steady beeping, soft, rhythmic, mechanical. It felt like it was coming from a great distance, echoing in her skull. She floated somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, her body heavy as stone, her mind sluggish. Then came the smell, antiseptic, sterile, familiar in the way that triggered a ripple of unease through her foggy thoughts. Hospital. Her throat felt raw when she tried to swallow. She became aware of the dryness in her mouth, the soreness along her temple, the dull ache in her ribs. Slowly, painfully, she forced her eyelids to open. The room came into focus in fragments. White ceiling tiles, a curtain partially drawn, the faint hum of machines, and him, Jungkook. He sat in a chair beside her bed, head bowed, one hand curled loosely near hers on the sheet. His hair was longer than she remembered, messier. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, but the sight of him was unmistakable, a shock to her system that jolted her fully awake. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. She blinked, expecting the image to dissolve. But he remained, solid and real, breathing slowly in the dim light. Her chest tightened. What was he doing here? Her lips moved, her voice rasping like sandpaper. Jungkook? His head snapped up, his eyes those same storm grey eyes she used to get lost in met hers. Relief flooded his face so fiercely it made her heart leap. Wine, he whispered. He leaned closer, his voice unsteady. You are awake. She stared at him, trying to piece together the fragments of memory, the rain, the curve of the road, the sound of shattering glass, then nothing. What happened? She croaked. You were in an accident. His voice was gentle, careful, as though afraid she might break if he spoke too loudly. But you are okay. Concussion, some cuts and bruises. The doctor said you will be fine. She let out a shaky breath, sinking back against the pillows. Relief mingled with disorientation. And then, sharp and bewildering, came the question. Why are you here? Jungkook flinched almost imperceptibly, but she saw it. His gaze flickered away for a moment before returning to hers. They called me, he said simply, her brow furrowed. Called you? You still had me listed as your emergency contact. The words hit her like ice water. She turned her face toward the ceiling, blinking hard. Of course. She meant to change it 100 times. Every time she had filled out some form at the clinic or updated her records. She had told herself she would erase his name, replace it with Maya's or her parents'. But somehow she never did. And now here he was. I forgot, she whispered, heat creeping up her neck. Jungkook's lips curved in something between a smile and grimace. Yeah, I figured. Silence stretched between them, thick and awkward. The beeping of the monitor filled the space where words should have been. Finally, Vine dared to look at him again. He looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes, his posture tense, but there was something else there too, something softer. Concern, memories rose unbidden, sharp and painful. The last night they were together, the argument. Flashback. You never listened, Jungkook. Her voice had cracked, frustration spilling over like water from a too full glass. You are so consumed with your work, with your plans, you don't even see me anymore. He had shot back, angry, defensive. That's not fair. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Our future or yours? She demanded, tears blurred her vision. Because I don't think you ever know what I want anymore. The silence that followed had been suffocating, and then the words she couldn't take back. Maybe we shouldn't be together. The way his face had crumpled just for an instant before she shut down. Cold and unreadable, the slam of the door, the hollow emptiness afterward. Wine blinked back tears, forcing herself into the present. She didn't want to think about that night, not now. You didn't have to come, she said softly, though part of her was glad he had. Yes, I did. He replied immediately. His tone was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They glistened, fierce and raw. They called me, and you were hurt. I wasn't going to stay home. Something in her chest twisted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words tangled in her throat. Before she could respond, the door opened and a nurse entered, brisk and efficient. Miss Vine, good to see you awake. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, she muttered, her voice hoarse. The nurse smiled sympathetically, checking the monitor, shining a small light into her eyes. That's a concussion talking. You will be sore for a few days. We will be keeping you overnight for observation, but you should make a full recovery. Jungkook hovered silently nearby, his presence both comforting and suffocating. When the nurse left, silence fell again. Wine fiddled with the edge of the blanket, avoiding his gaze. You don't have to stay, she said finally, though the words tasted bitter. I will be fine. Jungkook studied her, his jaw tightening. I know you will be fine, but I'm not leaving. Her heart gave traitorous flutter. She looked away, staring at the ceiling tiles as if they held answers. Jungkook, she hesitated, then forced the words out. It's been a year. I know, he said quietly. Why are you doing this? He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was low, steady. Because I still care, Vine, whether you want me or not. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to push him away, to remind him of the past, but her body was weak, her heart weaker still. And in the sterile quiet of hospital room, with the memory of shattered glass still fleshed in her mind, she found herself unable to say the words. Instead, she closed her eyes, turning her face away. I need to rest. Jungkook nodded, though she didn't see it. He settled back into the chair, silent and steady, a sentinel at her bedside. And as sleep pulled her under once more, one couldn't escape the thought that perhaps deep down she had never changed that emergency contact for a reason. The morning lights landed pale and cool through the hospital blinds. The wine stirred, groaned softly as she blinked awake. The dull ache in her ribs hasn't lessened much, and the pounding in her skull reminded her with merciless clarity that the accident hadn't been some nightmare. She shifted carefully against the pillows, wincing at the tug of the IV line. When her eyes finally adjusted, she noticed him again, Jungkook. He was still there. He was slumped in the chair beside her bed, his long frame folded awkwardly, head tilted to the side in an uncomfortable-looking angle. He had a shaved, faint stubble shadowed his jaw. His coat hung over the back of the chair, and a disposable coffee cup rested forgotten on the floor. For a moment, Wine simply stared. She couldn't reconcile it after everything. After a year of silence, here he was, keeping vigil like he had every right to. Her throat tightened with an emotion she didn't dare name. She shifted the blanket, rustling. Jungkook stared instantly, his eyes snapping open. It startled her, the way his gaze went straight to her, sharp and alert, as though he had been waiting for any sign of her movement. "You are awake," he said, his voice husky from sleep. Wine managed a small nod. "You are still here?" His mouth curved faintly, though it wasn't quite a smile. "I told you I wasn't leaving." She should have been annoyed, should have told him to go, to give her space, but instead she found herself oddly comforted. She hated admitting it, even to herself. "You look like hell," she murmured, her voice scratchy. He huffed a quiet laugh. "Takes one to know one." The air between them softened, just for a moment until the door swung open. "Wine?" Maya's voice was like a rush of wind, breaking the fragile bubble that had formed. Her best friend strode into the room, a blow of dark curls, oversized sweater, and wild concern itched up across her face. She dropped her tote bag on the chair opposite Jungkook's and rushed to Wine's side. "Oh my god, you scared me half to death." Maya carefully avoided the ivy line as she leaned in to hug her gently. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I had to hear from the hospital this morning when they confirmed visiting hours. I thought you..." Her voice cracked and she pulled back, blinking rapidly. "I'm okay," she soothed, though her voice was thin, bruised but not broken. "That's not the point," Maya snapped softly, her eyes glistening. Then, noticing Jungkook for the first time, her expression hardened. "You?" she said flatly. Jungkook straightened, his posture taut. "Maya? What are you doing here?" Her tone was sharp, protective. Wine winced. "Maya? No, I mean it." Maya planted her hands on her hips, glaring. "You are the last person I expected to see, the last person I wanted to see here, if I'm being honest." Jungkook's jaw flexed, but he hadn't rise to the bite. "I'm here because the hospital called me. I'm still listed as her emergency contact." Maya's head snapped toward Wine. "Wait, what?" Wine felt heat flood her cheeks. She fiddled with the blanket, avoiding both their gazes. "I never got around to changing it." Maya gasped. "Never got around?" "Wine, it's been a year." "I know," she muttered. Jungkook's eyes softened slightly, but he stayed quiet, letting Maya's words hang heavy in the air. Maya shook her head in disbelief. "Out of everyone you could have put down, me, your parents, you left him? After everything?" Vine's thought tightened. "It's not like I planned for this to happen." "That's not the point." Maya's gaze flicked to Jungkook, sharp as glass. "What? You think this is some kind of sign? That fate threw you back together?" "Maya," she said sharply, though her own chest ached at the words. Jungkook finally spoke, his tone steady but low. "I'm not here because of fate. I'm here because she needed someone and I could not come." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line, clearly unconvinced. She turned back to Wine. "You should have changed it."